always the hardest part. On behalf of my sister Heidi and myself, we'd like to thank every person here today, and for those people further afield that couldn't make it here for whatever reasons, and for all of the kind words of condolence that we've had. I'd really like to thank everybody for that. It doesn't matter how ready you are for an event like this, you're never ready. I've pretty well cared for Mum for the last 2.5 years, 2 years of her being very unwell, and it's been difficult watching, unfortunately. But our Mum was born a St Peter's girl in an era when your family all lived in the same suburb with your relatives. She had two younger sisters, Auntie Norma, who was an absolute card. She was funny, but she passed away several years ago. And Auntie Pam, who lives in Queensland still to this day. I called her Bigfoot for various reasons. We won't go into that one. Mum and Dad met when she was 23, and they married very soon after that. To call them soulmates would be too soft a term. They were a perfect pair in every single way. Like, you could not ask for a better pair. Imagine growing up in a house where you never ever heard your parents argue. We did. And I can honestly say I never ever heard them have a bad word with each other. I found out later years that, yeah, they did in fact have arguments, and it was usually about Heidi and myself. For good reason, probably more so myself. But we never heard those arguments, not once. In saying that, Mum can kill you with a look from across the room. And I've got silence plenty of times from across the room, so somebody else I'm cognizant, and I'm sure someone else, more people than that will too. Dad left us, 20 years ago, about 3 weeks after his birthday. In similarities, Mum would have been 87 on the 12th of this month. So she's died 2.5 weeks before her birthday. So both ends of the spectrum, but they did, everything together. And there's, myself, and I'm sure there's a few people in this room that said to Mum at the time that you'll meet someone else, Shirley, and her answer was always the same: why? I won the lottery the first time, why would I go back again? I lived and worked together in what appeared total harmony to everybody from the outside, and it certainly was from our perspective. Back in the 60s, Dad was working for Chrysler Television, which is part of Philips, and in the board meeting had a bet with the sales manager that he could come up with a new item that he'd never dealt with before and make it number one. And with Mum and Dad together, they went out to a cabaret a couple of nights later, saw a band called the Kingswoods, went and spoke to them, and that was back in the flower power, bell-bottom jeans, wild hair. Changed their name to the executives, put them in 3-piece suits, and turned them into number one in this country. The sales manager did have to resign. He lost the bet, which was awesome. And that band that started it, as I said, was the executives. There was others that followed that, and that bet really did lead to the Cordon Bleu agency being started up, and they had people like the executives, the La-Di-Da's, Timepiece, Axiom, Doug Parkinson, Glenn Shorrocks, Rick Springfields, John Farnham's, Max Merritt's. They're all part of that stable. And as children, my sister and I had the best time. We had these guys rehearsing in our lounge room as kids. We didn't have to go out and see them anywhere else because they were all there. We travelled across the globe. Dad got moved across with Philips to England and was design director for the whole of Europe. And we had an education that most kids wouldn't get. We got to travel the world and see see different cultures back in the 1970s when travel was expensive, and apparently, according to my sons, it's expensive now. It cost them $1,000 to come up just for today. Jetstar prior to COVID, it was $99 each way. So thank you boys for getting up here. The thing is now that even though we had that beautiful upbringing,